Welcome to Electrolysis Unplugged, an after-hours chat beyond the probe with Joanie and Stephanie. We're here to dive deep into the world of electrolysis, education, and all things hair removal.
Whether you're a seasoned professional or just curious about the art of permanent hair removal, we've got the insights, tips, and fun stories to keep you plugged in.
So grab your tools, take a seat, and let's get into it. This is Electrolysis Unplugged, brought to you by the Electrology Education Coalition.
Welcome back to Electrolysis Unplugged, the live version. Today we have a special guest, Hazel from Kiwifruit Coaching, a life coach for the LGBTQIA plus community, who's all about realness and radical growth and just being your full self.
Hazel, thanks for being here. First question, tell our listeners a little bit about you. So what brought you to life coaching? What's the heart behind Kiwifruit Coaching? So tell us all about you.
Okay, absolutely. Well, hello, electrologists. Thank you so much for having me. My voice may sound a little bit familiar to you because I've had an ad on all the previous episodes of Electrolysis Unplugged. The reason for that is I am the editor for the podcast as well. So a little bit of a side thing that I do to help out Steph here. So as you said, I'm a life coach for the LGBTQIA plus community. So the reason why I started off as a life coach is as a queer person, as a trans person, traditional therapy had failed me. Essentially, when I was in New Zealand, there was a therapist that I had who was fantastic, but she was cisgender, didn't have any real understanding of even being gay, let alone being trans. So while I was working through stuff with her, I was unable to really figure out any gender identity things. Then, once I got here and started with a therapist here in Washington who was queer, but also cisgender, it was one of those things where it was like, okay, you have more of an understanding, but you don't have like the lived experience to understand and to help me figure out what's going on. So when I first figured out that I was trans, it was a difficult process. It was confusing. It was scary, and I had to sift through information online to figure things out for myself. And so the reason why I pursued life coaching is because I wanted to create a space for people like me who didn't get the support that they needed or couldn't find the support that they needed through traditional therapy. And I go from more of a trans affirming way. So I recognized a need, and also I've developed skills previously through my life experience and research to assist my community. But I've also previously trained in New Zealand with Youthline and Rainbow Youth. That was way back when I was originally flirting with the idea of like going into therapy, going into life coaching. But at that time, I recognized that there was something still not quite making sense within me, which turned out to be gender identity. But yeah, when I was starting my journey into becoming a mental health professional, there were two paths. There was the formal official therapy route, which would require years of study to learn the patriarchal and often colonial ideals that had failed me previously as a patient, and ultimately frustrated me with its hands-off and sterile nature. Or the other option was I could go the scarier path of betting on myself and my abilities, getting certified as a life coach and striking it out on my own. So I've never really been one for formal education, but I knew I could help people and I wanted to do it right. Technically, anyone can call themselves a life coach, or you can buy a certification through a weekend course. I wanted to do it properly, though, and I did a longer course through the Academy of Modern Applied Psychology. They call themselves Ecology for short, to ensure that I was learning helpful skills to actually help my clients. Now, I had been planning on taking my time to start the business, but I burnt out in my call center job, and the election result also created a sense of urgency. I needed to be helping people as soon as possible. So I started support groups online and in person at Zapmaster. Steph was kind enough to host our support groups there, and now they've grown to the point that we need to find a new venue. We found a new venue, but the growth has been amazing because clearly there's that need for community. But yeah, I got my website together. I started advertising, and I'm steadily growing my client base. But The beauty of being a life coach rather than a licensed therapist is I have the freedom to help my client regardless of geography. And I can keep my prices accessible because I don't have a mountain of student debt and licensing fees to pay off. The trans community is disadvantaged, and I didn't get into this work to get rich. I charge up to $80 for an hour session on a sliding scale. I have clients who pay me less due to their situation, and that's absolutely fine. Everyone needs help. I also don't take insurance, so I don't report to anyone. I can provide my clients with additional privacy and confidentiality, which is very important these days. Um, Also, a common question that I get is why Kiwifruit Coaching? So to explain that, New Zealanders call themselves Kiwis because that's our national bird is the kiwi. It's hang on, which way am I going? Yeah, that's my logo here. So that's a kiwi bird. So we call ourselves Kiwis. We call the fruit a kiwi fruit. I know that in America they call them the fruit kiwis. And also, I'm trans and I'm a lesbian, so I'm a little fruity. So you throw that all together and you get Kiwifruit Coaching.
You know, one when so last year,
Hmm.
Hazel and I met at our like grand opening of the new location, where her wife was like, "I gotta go figure out if this person's legit, that they're actually going to be taking care of my wife, that kind of thing." But we became friends first
Yep.
because
Yep.
she like basically landed in my life at a ribbon cutting ceremony, and initially, like the whole thing was like, we can help because you didn't at that point have insurance that could cover your electrolysis because of like your status and stuff like that.
Hmm.
But you had the access to the students, and it was kind of interesting because in that time frame, like your growth was unraveling in beautiful ways, like not unraveling like chaos, but like
Yeah. Yep.
that are beneficial. You were unveiling it, and it was really cool to watch it. I also would say that we have this unique experience as electrologists that we kind of unintentionally land ourselves in spaces where we end up life coaching, but we're not necessarily equipped to. And all of a sudden, when you were like, "Hey," um, like, because we live right now, we live about 30 minutes apart from each other, and so she was living
Yep.
here, in a smaller city. Now she's in a little bit larger city in the capital near me, and so we needed a space and from the fall on where our community would feel supported and a safe space, a place to talk, get the feels through. And so I had already done support groups back when I was in my family's practice my whole life. And when you're like, I need to figure this out, and I was like, Zap Masters, you got it. Like, just enjoy. I will open the door. We'll figure out snacks and just let you talk. I think that like many of our listeners definitely like they work alongside of gender affirming care. And so like when I think about your importance, there's so many reasons why you're important, right? But like, why do you think that coaching specifically for the LGBTQI community plus is so vital right now? Like what would you, if you were to take a moment to think about that? And I'm sure
Mhm.
Joanne has like a little bit of
Yeah, and I guess my question is, what kinds of things do your clients come to you for, and how do you help them navigate the chaos of life with clarity?
Okay. Yeah. Great question. So, I mean, firstly, I just want to recognize and thank everyone who works in gender affirming care. Y'all are legitimately heroes in my eyes. You may think that you're just removing hairs, but after every electrolysis session that I had with Steph or with her students, I could see myself in the mirror more. You're literally removing despair and dysphoria from your clients, even with your cis clients. That's gender affirming care too. So, yeah, I just want to take a moment to say thank you, electrologists. I appreciate you and the gender affirming care that you do because it is important work and it is life changing for your clients. So hard pivot from that uplifting moment, because to answer your question, I'm going to have to speak very matter of factly about some intense topics that are currently affecting America specifically right now. But I know from experience, like living in New Zealand, that whatever happens in America flows out into the rest of the world. Like, for example, after the 2016 election, open bigotry increased in New Zealand, just as it did here in America. So I'm sure it's even worse now. So the scary thing is what we are seeing here in America currently is we're seeing repeated attacks on the trans community from politicians, and the tracks are being laid for some truly heinous action against the queer community as a whole. They want to eradicate the trans community, either literally or by forcing us to detransition, to hide ourselves and live miserably. It's not an exaggeration to say that we are facing trans genocide. There are states that have put bounties on anyone being visibly trans, and there are steps in motion to make being visibly trans a death penalty offense. That's extremely heavy for an electrology podcast, but it is the reality for the trans community right now. But what y'all can do is provide a safe space for your trans clients, because it may be the only place where they feel that they can be themselves and can be seen as themselves. It may even be the only safe space outside of their home. We also like, if we just really need you to be loud with your support, because we need all the allies that we can get right now. It's a terrifying time to be trans, yet we're seeing more trans people than ever. I believe COVID made a lot of us realize how mortal we are, how little time we have, and why should we waste that time living miserably, like inauthentically, pretending to be people that we're not, to fulfill some sort of role that's been dictated for us. That's a massive hurdle for trans people when we're first figuring out ourselves, making sure that we're not trading one role or stereotype for another. There's a lot of pressure to pass as a cisgender person, which I absolutely hate, because it's all based in like colonialist, patriarchal, Western beauty ideals that, are hard to achieve even for cisgender women. But this pressure is also currently being enforced with violence. So it's impossible to ignore the safety that comes with passing. It's a hell of a topic to grapple with as you're figuring out exactly who you are and who you want to be. Like, identity is messy enough at the best of times without adding all these external pressures and forces. And so my coaching approach is tailored to each person to help them figure out their identity for themselves. Not my idea of who they are, not society's idea, but who they are in their soul. So that's why I think coaching is so important right now. The world is trying to tell trans people that they shouldn't exist. And I help them live as authentically as possible as an act of radical self-love and resistance. With, everything going on, with all of the external stresses, all of the doom scrolling and everything like that, it puts people in a state of hypervigilance that can cause extreme stress. And so there's a lot of burnout to deal with as well. I help my clients figure out how to finish their stress cycles, dealing with the physical manifestations of stress. I help them navigate relationship issues as they come up, especially navigating the waters around like coming out to partners and family, even professionally as well. But all of this is not limited to just trans or queer folks. Like, I have cis clients as well who benefit from my approach just as much. We're all trying to figure out who we are and how to get what we want out of life, and trying to figure out what that is that we want. I think we can all benefit greatly from prioritizing our joy and cutting stresses out of our lives that don't serve us anymore. And so, yeah, with coaching, with my approach, it's more of a forward momentum. It's more of, instead of just languishing and wallowing in the feelings and just staying stuck in the trauma and the stress and the grief and not actually processing and moving through it. That's what I aim to do, is I aim to sort of get that processed in a way that is like, okay, I've dealt with this now. I've learned the lessons that I need to learn. I can put this trauma aside and I can move forward with my life. So it's intense work, but it's extremely rewarding.
I know that you and I have talked about this during table time or here at the office.
Mhm, mhm.
One of the things I think is kind of cool, especially with somebody with PCOS, that, you know, in my youth got called some pretty gnarly things with having excess hair, right? Um, I think that it's important for people to also realize as electrologists that when we talk about affirming care, gender affirming care, dysphoria is one of the big things that you and I have discussed a lot about, and it's not too unsimilar to dysmorphia. And as a
Mhm.
lot of our patients that have PCOS, hirsutism, hypertrichosis, I honestly feel that services like yours, where people don't necessarily want to tiptoe fully into therapy spaces because they maybe have had adverse moments past, or they might have had inaccessible ways to get through some of those hard things. When I think about the PCOS community, I mean, one of the big things is our cortisol response, which is that nice little stress hormone that's just dumping into our system that kind of keeps us in that fight or flight or feign kind of cycle.
Yeah.
It's it's pretty amazing to see how when we talk about gender expansive care and gender nonconforming folks, um, even in the PCOS community, we talk about how like it's an intersex characteristic, um, and it's hard for people to digest that. And so being able to understand that just because something exists doesn't mean that you have to necessarily deal with it in the same ways. You just have to be able to process it so your body can rest again. I think that when you and I've talked about it, a big conversation that we've had is like, what would happen? Like when I think about going back in therapy and that kind of stuff, what would happen differently, like in your space? Like, what's like the real scoop in that moment? What happens in a kiwi fruit coaching session? That's the things that start popping into my head.
hmm Yeah. I mean, do you use frameworks, tools that helps clients move forward?
Okay. So I provide support to my clients that is holistic and trauma informed. I actually recently had a client call me an anti-therapy therapist, and I kind of love that. But yeah, there's some life coaches are purely goals oriented, and some therapists are purely feelings oriented. And I like to sort of combine those two approaches. It's not just how does that make you feel? How does that make you feel? How does that make you feel? It's also, why do you feel that way? What is that feeling telling you? Is it helpful or harmful? Where does it come from? What steps can we take to adjust that perspective so it serves you? So essentially, when you meet with me, I meet you where you are with unconditional positive regard. That means absolutely zero judgment, a kind heart, and intense curiosity to learn who you are and who you want to be. So I'll help you figure out what is keeping you stuck where you are currently. So that's limiting ideas, negative core beliefs, unprocessed trauma and grief. And then we work through it together piece by piece. It sounds a lot like therapy, but the focus is always to move forward and through these challenges, right? Rather than wallowing, like I said. Um, so I don't have a specific framework that I work within. My approach is unique and tailored to each client individually. That was a deliberate choice that I made early on as I was, as I feel trying to fit my client within a framework is just trying to sort of categorize and box them in, which is how I feel like traditional therapy failed me. That gives me a lot of freedom in making sure that the client is feeling heard and helped in the way that they need, rather than trying to, force the session in the way that I think it should go. I have a ton of resources, ideas, and tools to help them learn, but only as they are relevant to each client. Um, but I wanted to, provide some value in this podcast, and so I wanted to talk about a tool that I've developed myself, and I like to call it emotional time travel. So this is I'm not going to pretend like I've invented the wheel or like reinvented the wheel or anything like that. Like this is sort of a repackaging of other ideas that people have had before. But the idea is if you can almost like picture yourself throughout time, like you've got your past self, you've got your present self right here and now, and you've got your future self. So, past self, often when we look at our past selves, we can be quite unkind. We can cringe at past behaviors, we can cringe at past awkward moments. We can just be quite unkind to ourselves, right? So, what I'm working on with my clients is I want them to find their past self where they were at that time. And I want them to recognize that they did the best that they could with the information and the maturity that they had at the time. And that's almost a mantra that I get people to like memorize is just like whenever they are judging themselves harshly, is I did the best that I could with the information and the maturity that I had at the time. And it's that easy, right? It's basically looking at your past self with kinder eyes, treating them with grace and forgiveness, and going, "Hey, you did the best that you could. I've learned the lessons. I'm not going to repeat those mistakes. I can move forward with my life. So then that takes us to the present, the here and now, the you that is experiencing life right in this moment. And you can get into real head messing kind of things and saying there is no such thing as the present in terms of like how time works, but we'll avoid that for now. But basically your present self is you right here and now. And so we need to meet ourselves where we are. So it's things like, what do I need right now? What self-care do I need to be able to function? Being kind to your present self. And then also looking to your future self. Now, this is me paraphrasing a lot into a very short space of time, but looking towards your future self as someone that you look up to, someone who you want to be, someone who inspires you. And then recognizing that in your present state, you won't be that person, but you can take the steps to become that person. And so it's like looking forward to your future self and being inspired by that person, and then thinking about wanting to be that person and doing the things to become that person, which I've actually found has helped me do some really scary things and be brave in scary situations. Because, I mean, even before this podcast, like, right, I'll admit, I was nervous. I had like stage fright, that's typical. But what I say to myself is, future Hazel has already done this and she rocked it. So I just got to go and do it.
That's right.
Hazel,
It's a little bit of a life hack. Yeah.
always
great.
excited to talk to you.
Yeah.
We do kind of have a question from somebody here. So the question is, what would be the appropriate verbiage to use when topics get difficult in the treatment room to help clients feel supported, but also to let them know we don't have the appropriate training and point them towards resources? So that tends to happen quite a bit where, people get comfortable in the treatment room, and we do tend to have a good amount of offloading that happens on our treatment beds. And so this question actually comes up a lot from electrologists as far as how to
Yeah.
handle we want to be supportive. We don't want to say the wrong thing, but at the same time, we want to make them feel like this is, a place where they can be safe enough to share these things if they feel like it. So we just kind of have to navigate a sticky line, I guess. So what would be your recommendation for that?
Also,
Yeah, I mean, sorry.
about being trauma informed in the same, it's like when you talk about that, because not everybody understands trauma informed coaching and that kind of stuff. So I feel like these go hand in hand. So I really want you to dive back into that too.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. So, obviously, as electrologists, like you are dealing with people in a very intense state, like dealing with intense pain, there's a lot that comes up, obviously. And especially if you've got someone lying there talking at you, a lot's going to come up. And so I think it's really important um, for y'all to make sure that you are setting the boundaries that you need to set. Because conversations can naturally just veer way off into the deep end when you're least expecting it. And it's kind of hard to backtrack, right? It's kind of hard to bring it back to that surface level. And obviously as you're zapping away, it's kind of hard to, because you're kind of just responding, trying to keep the conversation flowing while you're working away. But you're focusing, and your mind and your eyes are here while you're taking out his. So it can, like, I'm sure it's happened many times where the conversation has gone real deep real quick, and you go, oh, help, I don't know what to say, I am stuck here, I don't know what to do. So I think it's important to recognize it as it happens, like make sure that as you get that sort of gut feeling of just like, oh, I'm feeling a bit iffy about this conversation, I'm not sure that I want to go here. It's difficult, like you will have to find the words that work best for you. But essentially, you are well within your rights to say that I'm not comfortable talking about that, right? Like there is no shame in doing that. There's no judgment in doing that. And you can also do it in a kind way. And I would just say to them, hey, look, like that's really intense. And I'm sorry that you're dealing with that. I don't think I have the ability or the bandwidth to help you with that. And you can leave it there essentially. Like either they'll take the hint and they'll back off, or you may just need to be a little bit more explicit and just be like, hey, I'm not comfortable with this conversation. Can we please change the topic? You know.
There was a
Um,
question about
yeah.
your support group and if there's an online option.
Yes, there is. We do have an online support group. I don't currently have a date announced. I am working on that because I just moved house, so that threw everything into disarray. But yeah, absolutely. I
And
do
would that
run
be found on
an
your website, maybe?
yep on kiwifruitcoaching.com
Cool.
/events. I'll always have the most up to date dates there. Sorry, what did you say about the trauma informed
But
side of things,
I think
Steph?
that like one of the big things that, because when you're talking about like that's heavy, I don't know if I can hold space.
Yeah.
And we talk about like the new terms of like I don't have the forks, I don't have the spoons. I don't, and like we were joking last week that I'm out of forks, I'm out of spoons, I'm out of
Hmm.
sporks. I probably just have shanks at this point. Um,
Yeah.
so it's hard because sometimes so many people, and I would say like an unfortunate part of the human condition is that we all face trauma of some type. Okay. And how we hold
Yeah.
on to that trauma is going to be very different. But understanding that like trauma could be held in certain areas of the body, understanding that pain can bring forth a trauma response that has maybe happened to them in the past. But also that it could be igniting traumas that you've faced in the past, and that it's one, I would say, and I know that we've talked about this, but like, it's not necessarily my space to hold your trauma or your space to hold my trauma. And I don't actually have to tell you those things. I don't have to explain those things of why I'm not comfortable, but I want you to know that I understand your discomfort. And I feel like that's in that air of understanding how trauma hits the system,
Yeah.
and how we can essentially help us out of that pit that happens in that moment of the trauma dump, of the overshare, of
Yeah.
feeling like you have to explain why you understand with your own pain.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily the place to do so. So,
Yeah, exactly.
what does trauma informed mean in the coaching space?
Yeah, so in the coaching space, specifically when I say trauma informed, it's mainly I'm talking about I get a lot of clients come to me and they think that they have to have a goal in mind. Like, okay, if I'm getting a life coach, I need to have a goal in mind. Like I want to achieve this thing, right? And so when I say trauma informed, it's like, okay, I'm not just helping you achieve your goals. I'm not just helping you go, okay, I want to write this book in X amount of time or what have you. Like that's all very well and good, and we can absolutely achieve that. But my focus is more on okay, rather than holding you accountable and setting goals, smart goals, all that rah rah, all that stuff that we've all learned, right? Instead of that, it's like okay, what's holding you back from writing the book? Where did that come from? What is that negative core belief? Okay, is this like are you not writing the book because you don't think that it will be good? Where does that come from? Like, it's digging down into those layers and then going, okay, cool. So let's go back. Where could this have come from? Like, what are some past events that may have informed this? And how can we look at that now with kinder eyes? Or if it's trauma, what have you learned from it? And do we still need to be holding on to this? Or have you learned what you can learn from this? And now it's time to put the heavy textbook down, you know? So it's delving into the deeper level to make sure that we can keep moving forward.
I love that.
Today, we want to shine some light on some of our amazing partners who are helping shape the future of electrology education, services, distribution, and so much more. We're thrilled to have such amazing partners and supporters. Whether you're just starting out or a seasoned professional, these vendors and schools have what you need to succeed. When it comes to top-tier machines, look no further than Aesthetic Systems. They offer the latest in technology for both the electrology and aesthetics industry. Their machines, furniture, and more are known for reliability and precision, helping the professionals deliver the best results to their clients. Stay ahead of the curve with Aesthetic Systems' innovative tools. You can learn more about them at aestheticsystems.com. That's aestheticsystems.com. Zapmaster Electrology is located in the Pacific Northwest in Centralia, Washington. Stephanie Shields and her Zaplings lead the charge with award-winning education. Whether you're just starting out or looking to deepen your expertise, Zapmaster offers hands-on training, online theory courses, and so much more. And don't forget their distribution center. Led by Michael Shields, this is your one-stop shop for high-quality tools, products in electrology, aesthetics, laser hair removal, and so much more. Ready to enhance your practice? Visit thezapmaster.com. That is thezapmaster.com, and discover the resources awaiting for you.
Hey there, electrologists. My name is Hazel Bloom. I'm a life coach for the LGBTQIA+ community and its allies. As a trans woman, I have done the hard work and introspection to figure out who I am, what I want from life, and how to live authentically as myself. These are universal skills that I can teach you and help you gain the confidence to thrive. Also, I know that the conversations with clients on the table can get a bit intense and beyond the scope of electrology, so I'd invite you to refer them to me so they can get the support they need through a tough time instead of taking that burden on yourself. I'm also available as a resource for you if you just need some assistance figuring out how to help a client or to ask any questions. Whatever you need, I can help. My website is kiwifruitcoaching.com, or you can email me directly, hazel@kiwifruitcoaching.com.
Thanks for tuning in to Electrolysis Unplugged. Be sure to check out our amazing sponsors for the best in electrology tools, training, technology, and so much more. Now, back to the show.
Hazel, I know that I'm not outing you in this moment. Say this, you're as a trans woman, working with trans affirming approach. How has your own journey maybe informed and impacted your coaching style when you think about your growth as a coach?
Yeah. Okay. So my own journey was messy to begin with. What I needed more than anything else was someone who had just been through something similar to say, you're not crazy, you are valid. Just that acceptance and validation would have gone a long way. And I did get a lot of that from you, Steph, right? When, in your electrology clinic. But that's also not your job. Your job is to provide gender affirming hair removal care, right? Not to give me the acceptance and validation that I needed.
You're not the reason.
So
don't worry.
yeah. But yeah, ultimately that challenge though helped my coaching as I learned to change my brain from seeking external validation to creating its own internal validation. So turning that lens from the external into the internal. So rather than what people look at, what they perceive, what am I wanting to present? What do I want to see in myself? So I learned to accept and I learned to assert myself. It was a long process and it took a lot of introspection and some intense interrogation of myself. But now I can use those skills and experiences to help others to make the path slightly easier for the next person. But yeah, it's essentially when I first figured out that I was trans, which only happened a couple of years ago, right? For all intents and purposes, I was a late bloomer. All we had to go off of was the internet. We had anecdotal data to go off of. And so the first week of me figuring out that I was trans was just an absolute nightmare for my wife and I, trying to figure out what to expect, what's going to happen. She was, we were seeing anecdotal posts of people saying, oh, going on hormone replacement therapy has changed my sexuality, stuff like that. And so of course she's immediately going, oh no, am I going to lose my partner? Is her sexuality going to change? Are we no longer going to stay together? All these just crazy fears and everything that we didn't have a place to put, or we didn't have someone to try and help us sift through it. And so that's what I hope to provide to people is I want to give them that kind ear and that shoulder to sort of lean on and just be like, I'm confused as hell. I'm just figuring myself out. Everyone's expecting me to educate them. I don't know myself. Help, and that's I'm being the person that I wish I had at that time. Let's put it that way.
That's great. What are some powerful transformations that you witnessed through your work?
Ooh, okay. So so two examples that I'm really proud of. The first one is a client in their 40s who had always felt restricted by external judgment. They had a deep-seated fear of looking stupid, right? Which we all do, but like it was an intense fear of looking stupid. And it was holding them back from showing up authentically. They'd learned that they could safely be silly and goofy at home with their partner, but like outside of the house, they were quite stoic, quite reserved, not really sharing their personality with others, which was also preventing them from making genuine connections with others. So we worked through their internalized shame. We worked through where that belief came from originally. Spoiler alert, parents, always is. And yeah, we worked on giving themselves permission to exist, which was like that phrase in particular, giving yourself permission to exist, was kind of like the cheat code that kind of unlocked, in their brain, like, oh, I don't need this external permission. I don't need to wait for someone to say, yes, you're allowed to do this, because it's not going to happen. Right. And so they started giving themselves permission. And so they told me that in the next session, they went out for drinks with friends and they were able to be themselves. They were dancing around and being goofy with their partner, even though they were the sober driver. So didn't ever drink, and yet they could still be goofy and silly and have a good time. They said that they'd had other experiences where they previously would have retreated and told themselves, I'm not allowed. And now they say, why not? Who's actually judging me? Like, who am I waiting for permission from? You know? Another client, another, like really good moment for me was another client as a young adult. They have a family who is, like, by all appearances, they're supportive, but they don't really understand what they're going through as a trans person. And they even had previous therapists try to tell them that they were mentally ill for doubting their gender. So basically, they only received like judgment and confusion from the people who were supposed to support them through this confusing time. After our first session, they gained so much confidence just from having someone see and hear them as themselves, just treating them with their chosen name, referring to them with the correct pronouns, seeing them as their gender, right? To be met without prior baggage, treated as a valid person and seen as themselves, and to not have to educate the person that's supposed to be supporting them through a difficult time and confusing time. And so, they just said, like, what you're saying is the thoughts inside my head. You're saying what I'm thinking, like, you understand. And just to like witness that moment of just the validation and the feeling of belonging, that's what keeps me going. That's what keeps me
Mhm.
doing this job as a life coach. That's what makes it so rewarding, is seeing those moments of people finding themselves. And like I'm sure that, I'm sure Steph, like, and Joanna, with your clients, like, you would see that as well. Like, over time you see them come into themselves and figure out who they are. It's a beautiful thing.
It's
Oh, yeah, for
all my
sure.
Yeah, I mean, something you said earlier when you're like, spoiler alert to parents, but like one of the things I heard um years ago, that those closest to us, that like where we're at in that moment, they like the
Hmm.
version of us, also install the buttons to push us to keep us that way. And so
Hmm.
sometimes it's like, of course, those who, um, and of course they love you, but they love a version of you that they have like predisposed, right? Like, as a parent, we gift our kids names, right? Doesn't mean they have to keep the name, right? It's the name
Yeah.
I thought was going to be the best thing for the little, human that I was growing, right? But if any point in my child's life they decide that their name needs to shift because that's not how they see themselves, guess what? It's my job as a parent not to hold on to what I gifted them, the
Mm.
placeholder. I mean, maybe they like it, right? I mean, I
Yeah.
don't necessarily love the name Stephanie. I wouldn't like go and name somebody else Stephanie, mainly because there's a billion of us. But like, I would say that like it's one of those things, I can't see anybody else other than Stephanie. Even when I was like young and going to a club under 21 and trying to play a 21, uh,
Hmm.
coming up with my own new name, like in those moments, it's like I can't be that person. It's not who I am. But
Yeah.
that validation, I had to figure that out. Like I had to understand that that was my button that I got to install. And I think like when we're adults, we have to start uninstalling the buttons that were accidentally given to us. um,
Yeah.
or the boxes that we were accidentally put into. And it's like, actually, no, I actually don't fit in that box. I don't like the box. So I'm going to go over here.
Yeah.
Uh,
Stop trying to put me in that box. There
um,
is a metaphor that I heard, like an analogy that really like very similar to what you just said with like people installing those buttons.
mhm,
Um, Essentially, they were saying like when you are born, you are gifted a garden, essentially, right? And you're too young to tend to the garden yourself. You don't know how, you don't have the tools, you don't understand. And so that garden is tended to by your family, by your peers, right? And so they will plant things in your garden, beliefs, ideas, opinions, that sort of thing. They will plant that in there in your garden. And some weeds may take hold, some negative core beliefs, for example, some, self Hades sort of, like that sort of negativity thing, can grow in there as well. And so as we get older and as we start to take stewardship of ourselves and can learn those skills to do the gardening for ourselves, then it's up to us to figure out what we need to keep planted and what needs to get weeded out. And that can even be some like, some pretty plants that other people love. They can be beautiful plants or whatever. But if it doesn't suit you, then you can remove it, and you also don't have to keep it there for fear of somebody else saying, oh, why did you remove that plant? Oh, that was my favorite plant. Why'd you do that? It's your garden. Tend to it how you want.
oh my God, I love that. Chills, chills. One, many of our students, our clients, uh,
Mhm.
not only the ones navigating gender affirming hair removal, because that's like a big part of like our day to day, but like also our students, school stress, our new grads, those career pivots, trying to um, see yourself in a new light. When I tell my students, like, I don't care if you're going to work for somebody else or yourself, I still want a business plan. I still want you to see and envision yourself in that space. Um, like, do you have advice? I mean, obviously, like small plug, anybody could hire you, however their presentation is in life. But
Mhm.
outside of that, like, what would be advice that you have for folks going through those big, like, identity and life transition moments in that space?
Okay, yeah, great question. And I mean, hey, I can absolutely relate with the stress of a big career pivot, especially those who are striking it out on their own, setting up their own businesses and clinics. That's some intense bravery to literally bet on yourself like that. So I hope that everyone recognizes that and are proud of themselves because that's scary. That takes some intense bravery. And so, like, just everyone just take a minute just to sort of recognize that you're doing something pretty cool, like even if you're working for an existing clinic, to pivot to like a completely different field and face the stress of going back to school as an adult learner, it's a lot. So yeah, I hope everyone is very proud of themselves right here right now and recognizes that.
I love
um but if you're going through a big identity or life transition, my biggest piece of advice is to be kind to yourself. Now, it sounds simple, but it actually takes a lot of work to achieve. And I felt myself rolling my eyes a little bit with that advice, but like let's break it down. Let's like actually dig into what being kind to yourself means. So it means listening to your body and your mind. What are you feeling? Where are you feeling it? Like in your body. So like if you're angry or whatever, do you feel it in your chest? Right? If you're feeling guilty or something, do you feel it in your stomach? Do you feel like where is it sitting in your body? Like just that somatic approach to like listening to the signals that your body is giving you based on emotions. Right. So for example, right, for electrology, some examples might be like making sure that you're looking after your hands, your wrists, and your back, in particular, not persisting through a tweak and exacerbating it to the point of causing like lasting damage. Listening to your energy levels when you're making commitments, giving yourself permission to say no to things if you don't have the energy or the time for them, prioritizing connections that fulfill and recharge you, and allowing yourself to be a mess if you feel like a mess, right? Like cry, have that tantrum, vent, get it out of your body. And then once it's out of your body, leave it and move on, right? Holding those emotions in is poisoning us. And not listening to our bodies is killing us. I also thoroughly recommend, like in terms, so that's like the body side of things, but in terms of the mind side of things, I thoroughly recommend setting aside time to journal daily if possible. Even if it's just like a paragraph or two, it's just a helpful tool to check in with yourself, right? Just to see how that thought process is going. How am I feeling? And there's also times where you can look back on past entries and go, wow, I really looked at that from one set perspective, huh? But now I think about it like this. And then you can sort of like notice and recognize your growth as you go. Um, but one thing in particular that I think is really important for us in this day and age, especially in like the days of doom scrolling, going through Facebook or whatever your feed of choice is, seeing the state of the world, all those external stressors, right? We we're putting ourselves in stress cycles that we're not finishing. So to explain like what a stress cycle is, right? So let's think back to like caveman days, right? So like a caveman facing down a saber-toothed lion or whatever, right? So, a big old scary predator. And so in that situation, and this is like the primal feeling that is still within us when we go into fight or flight. But where it came from was our primal ancestors going into fight. I need to fight this lion in order to survive and live another day, or I need to, or flight. I need to flee from this lion to survive another day. It's these survival instincts, these survival responses that are responding to stress. So the very same thing happens in our body when we're dealing with modern everyday stress. Is our body can go into fight or flight, and it can actually be smaller levels of fight or flight, right? It doesn't have to be like oh, am I running or am I fighting right now? Like it can be like smaller instinctual things of just like, didn't like that. Oh, get away from that. Or, oh, that made me angry. Like those little moments can all add up together to create, this feeling of stress within your body that then isn't getting processed. Because, let's go back to our caveman example, right? Gets away from the saber-toothed lion, flees, gets away, gets back to safety in the cave and goes, oh, I survived. Or if the caveman fights the lion, kills the lion, wins, or whatever, the fight is over. I've survived to live another day. It's that moment of just of letting that stress out. And so we've unlearned that as people, really. Like we haven't been taught it. We haven't been taught to look after ourselves in that way. And so it's important to recognize when you are in a stress cycle, like, okay, is the stress still happening right now? Like, do I need to be stressed? Am I needing to respond to the stressor right now? Do I need to fight or flight this issue right now? Or can I let it go? Like, is it something that I can prioritize for later? Is it something that I've already done and I'm just holding on to and torturing myself with? All these sorts of things. So it's just a matter of figuring out how to complete these stress cycles. And so going back to doom scrolling, everything that you're scrolling past that's stressing you out is a little lion, right? You're just inflicting lions upon yourself. And so I urge people to recognize that when you are doom scrolling, just take a moment to just like sort of feel how it's sitting in you. It's sitting like within your body. How is it making you feel? And recognize whether that's how you want to spend your leisure time. Because essentially it's like, okay, I'm just going to turn my brain off. I'm going to scroll on my phone and that's how I'm going to relax. That's the idea behind it, right? But really, we could be stressing ourselves out a lot in our leisure time. So just something that I want people to be mindful of.
So you're saying nothing but cat videos from here on out.
Yes.
Oh yeah, perfect. Yeah, 10 out of 10 suggestion.
Actually,
In fact, if someone invents an app that's just that, that'd be perfect.
Yeah, right.
That's how my YouTube feed looks like. It's all funny animal videos.
Perfect.
And every time I'm like, if I want something, so like my YouTube algorithm is built for comedy. Let's say that my TikTok algorithm was built for news. My Facebook was built for my family. And my Instagram, honestly, even though I advertise in that space for this school, is built to connect with all of my like elder millennial friends from high school. and whatnot, and we're just sending dumb stuff back and forth. That's why I don't do DMs for like business, because you're going to get lost amongst the cat video, full stop.
Yeah.
Or something very funny that I probably don't need to be doing, but I had to do that because it is, I mean, in our line of work, think about it, like Joanie, like, you know this, when we have somebody who's stressed out like all the time, and they're like, I don't understand why this hair is taking so long. And we're like, well, your cortisol levels are like way up here. If you could just put that phone down even during your electrolysis treatment and like not be like putting any fires out during this moment of your time focusing on you, not on everybody else. It's huge. Or when they say to us, oh, I'm so relaxed on this table, and you're like, are you for real? And okay, like, but it is something I want to say. When somebody said in the chat, this might have been the first E2C I've cried through, and it's like, our goal is not necessarily to make you feel bad, but it is something that I knew, telling Hazel, you got to come on, you got to come on and talk. It was going to be a bit of a tearjerker.
It's heavy stuff,
Well,
so,
yeah.
important, but
Oh,
yeah,
this life stuff, it's intense. We all need a
that's
bit of
right.
support to get through it.
So, how do practitioners like us refer folks to coaching in a respectful, affirming way?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, what is a kind way to refer? I mean, it's not like you can just say, "Hey, I think you need therapy,"
Yeah,
even though
you
that's
need
what
help.
you. Yeah, even though that may be what you're thinking at the moment, right? But you can't say that.
No.
I mean, I guess you could get. I mean, if you want to refer them to me in particular, you could get them to listen to this episode, I guess. Or you could say, "Hey, I heard this life coach talking on this electrology podcast. She's trans affirming. She may be able to help." I don't know, like something like that. But it's yeah. I think I mean, like with what we were talking about earlier about like the putting up boundaries and saying, "Hey, I'm not in a place where I can process that," or like that, "Hey, that's not my area of expertise." But hey, I heard about this life coach on this podcast. I don't know. It could be a segue there, but yeah, I think it's just coming at it as less of a you need help to like, hey, this might help. I
Yeah,
guess there's a difference there.
for
So if
sure.
somebody in our life ends up accidentally hearing this while we're playing it while we're working, this
Hmm.
right here, it'll be your
Hmm.
like soft pitch. You could be like, oh, you know what? I am working on an area where you're not able to talk today. Do you want to hear a great podcast I just listened to? And then like,
And then cut it off before you get to this point because then they'll hear the ploy, you know.
Yeah.
oh, about the
Don't know
pod.
what we're all about.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm here to help.
That's right.
Yeah.
I gotta push you off the edge.
Yeah. But I
um,
mean, if anyone wants to work with me, like I just want to reiterate, I can work with anyone, anywhere, on anything. I am trans affirming, but I also work with cis clients just as well. The best way to get in touch with me is through my website. I have a contact form and a scheduling tool. So if you're really keen, you can book a free 15-minute session with me, or an hour-long session.
I'll
My
drop the
15
link
minutes.
again.
Thank you so much. My 15-minute is less of a consultation, and I call it a session because I want to give as much value as I can so you can decide whether or not we would work well together, rather than just like going, oh, yes, I could help with that. Ah, yes, I could help with that. Ah, yes, we can work on that after you give me money. Like that's not how I want to operate. And also, if we don't work out well together, then I want to make sure that that 15 minutes was not a complete waste of your time. So, like, what I would advise is if you do want to go for a 15-minute session, just have like something in your mind that you want to work on. Just something that you want to talk about briefly, and we can work on that together and see how we go.
Great.
Yeah, if you prefer to email me directly, my email is hazel@kiwifruitcoaching.com. Please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. I'm happy to help however I can.
so to finish off our time together,
Mhm.
I want to say seriously, thank you. This is huge. We're trying to find more practitioners outside of Joanie and I talking to our membership as much as we can, because we understand that this world is filled with beautiful information, and the fact that you took your evening to talk to all of us zappers is huge. I wanted to have a little bit of fun at the end of this because it was kind of heavy. So I was thinking some lightning round questions.
Okay.
But like Okay, I'm gonna just like pop, 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 ask the questions.
Gotcha.
First one, what's a great queer book that probably changed your life in helping you kind of navigate where you're at right now?
Okay. Yeah, that would be. It was a book called "Yes, You Are Trans Enough" by Mia Violet. Reading that book, I was just like, "This is me. This is me. This is me. Yep, this is me." Like she had more of a traditional like inkling of gender as she was growing up, more than I did growing up because she had more resources. But the parallels in her story, and also just because it's autobiographical, like it's her, yeah, it's autobiographical, but it's also like talking about how it feels to be trans, and it's an incredible book.
If you get a chance, drop that in the chat because I think that that's what Eileen was asking, but I'm not 100%.
Oh yeah,
Mhm.
I gotcha.
Legit, she's like, this is the fastest hour we've ever had. Yeah, this was pretty fast. Okay, coffee, tea, like what are we drinking?
So either energy drinks or actually I am a fan of cold brew. So like you get a little
Mm.
cold brew coffee jug, put some coffee grounds in there, leave it in your fridge overnight, add some coffee creamers because the states love their flavored coffee creamers, and I think
Yeah.
that makes me proud to be an American.
That's
Like,
what sold you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
favorite kiwi fruit moment of the year.
I think it would have to be, yeah, my young